I can't believe I'm going to say this. The Game Grumps just played our game the other day. We would like to thank everybody who's played, the Game Grumps, the Lovelies, everybody who's enjoyed it. We've seen a lot of comments, a lot of feedback, and we really appreciate it. I wanted to make this video as kind of a behind the scenes to how it was made, and a couple of things that didn't quite make the chopping block. So, with that, let's get right into it. Grump Wheel exists because we decided that we wanted to make something for the 10th anniversary of Game Grumps, and I was between games and wanted to make something to get back into game development since it had been a while, and we decided that Game Grumps themed Wheel of Fortune is something that needed to exist. Very early on, we actually had a very colorful wheel and an incorrect 11th anniversary logo, which was a placeholder. Since then, we've updated it to be the 10th one, but you'll see that in a couple of the images. You'll also see that there was a shop at one point. That was going to be for you to earn money and use it to spend on some of the customizations for the characters. We scrapped that in favor of time and gave the player the ability to select it from the beginning. The character select screen started off very simple with a little mock-up just to see what it would look like in the game. From there, I added a player to it to see what they would look like inside of that, and then ultimately moving into what it is today, with being able to select all of the different options for the customizations. This is an early version of the game room itself. You can see that there's only one player, they're in a little booth, and there's one thing in front of them. I was testing being able to spin and have it tick whenever it hit one thing. In this next picture, you see that there's a bench for 3 people, 2 shelves, a curtain, and the beginning wheel setup. So this is where we were testing having multiple players and also their number of how much money they have underneath their person at the bench. After that, we switched out the 3-person bench for the one that's currently in the game. The top of the bench changes color based on the color of the person that is playing. So red will be player 1, blue will be player 2, and green will be player 3. It's a more subtle detail that wasn't as obvious as I wanted it to be. I was trying to indicate the player in multiple ways, and you'll see that with some of the UI later. The final detail to the bench was that we added a strip around it that just glows RGB, because it was fun. Why not? Next, we were going to look at the wheel that was made. We started off with a very colorful wheel, kind of reminiscent of early Wheel of Fortune. From there, we decided that that was too much when it was spinning around, so we changed into a polka dot, or more of the Grumps theme. So we had the colors here that were really bright, and that felt like it was a bit much still, especially once you added the token in the middle and the numbers onto the wheel. So then we revised it to the colors that we have today, except Bankrupt doesn't have that black background, and there's also no lose a turn. So from there, we added lose a turn, added the black for the Bankrupts, and the coin goes in the middle of all of that. Starting off with an example from a tutorial online on how to make characters, since I haven't really made them before, we had this base to start working off of. From here, Tanya made some reference images so that way I was able to get started. Starting off with something that resembles Among Us, we were able to get the body started. Then we had the hips, the legs, and the arms added. From there, we're able to finish up the hands, add a little bit to the feet, and add the head on top. Now you can see that this shape does not match what is in the final game, but we're getting there. From here, we were able to add some preliminary textures to get something going, and then we of course have to add in eyes, the mouth, and the eyebrows. And of course, we had to do it in the most cursed way possible, because we didn't have those made yet. So while I was waiting for Tanya to draw those, I put in a picture from online to get it started to show her the idea. And then of course, after those were made, we threw it into the game to see what it looked like, and yeah, it was not quite lined up right, not quite the right shape, so we had to go back and revise some things. So we had to revise the hands. They were obviously a bit chunky there, and then we smoothed that out nicely. And then from there, seeing the mistakes from the previous one, we revised the entire character from scratch, and this time we were able to add hair, spots for the eyes properly. You'll see that they're sunken back a little bit to add space for that, and there's also more of a mouth shape to support that. Inside of Blender here, we have the character. So this is Aaron right now. The only difference between the characters is that their hair turns on, and that also is connected to the beard. They're all one shape. You see that this is all one piece. So if we turn off Aaron's hair, we could turn on Dan's hair. And this is what the models are doing in the game. They're just turning on or off different parts because they all share the same base. So if we turn off Dan's hair, we could turn on Ross's hair. And if we turn off Ross's hair, we could turn on Susie's hair. So we see that all of them share the same base, it just changes out their hair. And of course we had different eyes and eyebrows and mouths for them depending on the emotion they were currently having. So from here, let's turn back on Aaron's hair. We see that the shirt, there's actually multiple of them. So besides shirt, there's also the short sleeve shirt, which is just the same thing with the arms cut off slightly. And again, for the sleeveless shirt, it is the same thing except with the sleeves cut all the way back. You'll find that this actually messes with some of the animations for the sleeveless shirt, but either way, we'll go back to the regular shirt here. There were other pants that we had, but because you couldn't see them, we just left them out. For example, we had shorts. If I turn off the pants here, they were just shorter, very much similar to how these short sleeves were added. And also there were a different pair of pants that were involved as well. We had sweatpants, which you could tell how far that went because it just got named Body 01 since it was the actual body shape just trimmed down and changed the color and added a little loop to it. The characters all also have shoes. They obviously aren't seen either, so they were there, but they just are a different color. That's it. There's nothing to it. Just little feet shapes. To explain what's going on during the character select screen, I'll show you on the right side here is what you'll see in game, and on the left side is what I see in Unity. So the UI for the game is really big, as with most UIs in games, and it's just off to the side here. So we see that the UI is just comprised of a couple layers. For instance, we have this outline, and then that's the menu. This is a box that's rendering the camera that's facing Aaron down there. If we drag them off the UI, we can't see them. And also that goes underneath the one to the right of it. So Aaron is standing there. Let's put this back. Aaron is standing way down here, and the camera facing him is what's actually putting him on screen. So if we were to move the camera, we'd get the same effect as we did with moving them up there. And when you go to select different characters, if you change the Grump, it's changing their hair, their eyes, their eyebrows, and their mouth. It's just changing the textures on those. Same for Ross, same for Susie. Going back to Aaron, the shirt design changes which design is on the shirt. We have Bergie, Kitty Cat Gaming, Death Metal, Breaking Hearts and Blastin' Farts, a plaid shirt, I shaved my balls for this, a rib cage, the devil smiley or whatever you want to call it, Sonic, the NSP logo, Yas Queen Slay. Going back to the beginning one. We also have the shirt types, there's the 3, and that's just switching between those models. And we also have the colors, which is just changing the tint that is on the texture. And of course, if you had the design, it would be overlaid on top of that. Moving on to the game room itself, we see in the background, we have the Yowie paddle, David Cheeseman, the Hulk hand, and a poop emoji pillow. They also have lamps above them, if it wasn't clear. The lights aren't real, it's just a actual light object facing down from on top of them to give them enough light in this room. And you'll see that Brent is fully here, but the other characters are all loaded in when it starts. So that's why they're all blank, and since Aaron was the first one we made, those were just the default textures that are left there. They all get loaded in. You'll also see that the finalized wheel is here. The ticks here, the tickers, are each individually colored for the different players. And you'll see the dinosaurs are right here on the bench. When the dinosaurs popped up in the video, it's because with the screen around here, I want to say it is, if you mouse over the dinosaurs in that section, it will actually just zoom in on them. And at first it was zooming in and out repeatedly, so I made it so that way there's a cooldown on it, so that way you can only do it occasionally. The cooldown is quite quick, so if you see the dinosaurs popped up, it's because you put the mouse over there, and if they keep popping up, it's because you've left the mouse over there. And also we have the Return Prod Stepladder, which I forget what the reference is. This was made 2 years ago. And these are just some boom mics that were added to the room, just to make it so it looked like it was a set for an episode. Turning around, the board is just right here. That's it. It's exactly like the title screen, except the rest of the stuff is here. That's all it was added. Let's talk about the wheel for a second. So these ticks here, they are able to pivot, but they pivot from a different point with the physics. The wheel itself is comprised of all of these paddles, so the wheel is physically active. Whenever these touch it, it is slowing it down. There is, if I click this, a hitbox on every single one of these. This is the easiest one to see. And that section, if the tick mark is inside of it, because you'll actually see that the shape extends well past it, just to make sure that it goes inside of it. It's a little hard to see. Let me see if I can make this more obvious. So I've turned on a couple things to make the wheel easier to tell how it works. We see that the red ticker here has a object coming out of it, and this is not a solid object. The wheel itself has one of these for every single area, and this is telling this, when it collides with it or stays inside of it, what the value for that section is. So this one will let it know that that one is 650. And that's only when this is inside of it. So that's how it knows that it should be that value. So then the ticking noise is actually made when these different tickers, we'll take a look at the blue one so it contrasts with the red. When this collides with one of these paddles, it makes a noise. But all of them make noise whenever they hit one. So that's where the noises overlay and make that satisfying tick noise. And I thought that came out really well. Now let's talk about the AI. So it chooses from the available buttons on screen. If the buy a valve button is not available, it will have a 1 out of 2 chance to pick spin or solve. If all 3 buttons are available, it has a 1/3 chance to pick any of them. These numbers are also currently being revised so that way it doesn't always pick solve, because sometimes it likes to pick solve a lot. If it decides to spin, it's going to choose a random letter from ones that are available. If it decides to buy a vowel, it will also pick a vowel from the available ones. And if it decides to solve, this is where it gets a little more interesting. It's actually going to solve based on the letters on the board and which words are available in every phrase. Taking unintelligible rage noises as an example, rage and noises were mostly spelled out, so the AI only has a couple letters to fill in. So it's comparing the list of everything available and seeing that only 2 words fit those. As far as unintelligible goes, it just happened to be the only word that was that long. So because there was only one word to choose from that was that length, it was able to determine that's the right one. So the AI gets smarter as the game goes on, because as there's less letters that it has to figure out, there's less choices for which options it has. Taking a live example here, which ended up being the same puzzle, which is perfect, we see that the AI was able to guess unintelligible, but then it guesses randomly on the next 2, because none of them are filled out. So it had to choose from over 700 individual words, and it only picked 2. So that's why the AI gets smarter. As you fill in the boxes, less words fit for how many letters are in each position. So rage, position 1 is R, it's only going to find words that start with R. Then A, as the second letter, well, it didn't know that, so it's picked any letter for the second one. And then the third letter, G, then E, those it matched up as well. And it found one word that had R, G, and E, and was also 4 letters long, because otherwise it could have picked a word like garage. Earlier on, when the AI was still new, it was able to pick any letter that it wanted to fill in. It didn't have to choose from words, and that led to some funny situations where it would spell the most random things ever. And it was always interesting when it managed to spell words. As an example, I am the gigda meth. E. I don't know what secrets the AI was holding, but it was certainly not real words. There were 2 unused menu items, Pass and Play and Use Items. Pass and Play was for Android, so that way you can swap turns, and also Use Items would have been something you landed on to gain something to change out the wheel during gameplay. Pass and Play was removed because it was an Android feature, and being on the phone, all you had to do was pass them your phone for their turn anyway, so that feature was already there, so it didn't need to exist twice. Use Items was scrapped, and Use Items was an idea where if you landed on a prize on the puzzle, instead it would be an item, and then when you use it, it would affect the other 2 players for their turn. So here's an example of a lose a turn wheel where there's an extra lose a turn. You can also tell this was before I lowered the amounts because there's a 5,000 in that list. I wanted to take some time to go over some of the phrases and the categories, mostly the category. So for example, when Ross makes tea but wrong, that's part of the commercials category, and that was actually a moment from one of the commercials, and wasn't something that was said, but it was something visual. So we could see here that Ross makes tea with water with stuff inside of the cups, and not everything is, well, tea. So, That's one of the categories. Let's take a look at some of the other ones. For example, 10-minute power hour. That is things that are said or shown on screen during the 10-minute power hours. Aaron quotes are things Aaron said. Character names are names that they've made for various characters, whether it be like Zelda, where it's the main character, or characters that they meet and have to give a name. Commercials are from the commercials. Common Grump phrases are things like I'm gonna pre, because those are across various episodes. Dan quotes are Dan quotes. Impressions are things that they've said while impersonating other voices, such as Yoda or things like that. Incorrect Wheel of Fortune is when they have spelled or put in the wrong answer on Wheel of Fortune and have gone with it. Just tour things. So these are things that I believe have happened on tour. Let's see. Yes, there's only one of those, and it's Waluigi winning Mario Party. So that's going to have more added to it to be more unique. So some of the categories aren't as fleshed out as others. We also have things from Mario Maker, Ross quotes, Sonic games, video titles, what's Aaron doing, what's Dan doing, and also specifically Zelda games. So those ones had so many different pieces of content that those were easy to pick up on. So that's just some of the categories, but yes, some of the phrases are things that happen and not necessarily things that were said. Thank you everybody for playing, and we're really excited that everybody's really liking it, and especially that the Grumps played it. We never imagined that that would actually happen. The only thing we did was when we finished it, we sent an email to them saying, hey, we made this, and here we are 2 years later. So thank you all for playing, and we have one more thing we want to try to add to the game. Now it's going to take a little bit longer than I think, but I'm hoping it's not as long to actually do it. When that comes out, I'm going to update the itch page and put out a video on the same day. So look forward to that. And until then, thank you so much for watching. And until the next one, have a good one. And because I forgot to add them before and I don't want to re-edit the entire video, here are some of the textures that Tanya drew for the game.